If we were to gather 200 women in a room, women from all walks of life, from CEOs to stay-at-home mothers, from the newly married to the happily single, and we asked them to write down their deepest, most unspoken desire on an anonymous slip of paper, you might expect a chaotic mix of answers. You might expect romance, you might expect tenderness, and of course those things are there. But when researchers and psychologists actually do this, when they strip away the polite veneer of social expectation and look at the raw data of female fantasy, one specific theme rises to the top again and again, dominating the charts by a landslide. It is so prevalent that it is often called the universal paradox of female sexuality. The number one fantasy is not about taking control. It is about losing it. It is the fantasy of consensual non-consent, or in more poetic terms, the fantasy of the ravishment. For many of you listening, hearing this might send a shockwave of relief through your chest. For others, it might be confusing. We live in an era of empowerment. We are taught to be the architects of our own lives, to lead in the boardroom, to manage our households, and to assert our boundaries with fierce precision. So why is it that when the lights go down, the most powerful women among us often dream of a scenario where they have no choice at all? The statistics suggest that anywhere from 30% to 60% of women have had fantasies involving some form of being taken, overpowered, or dominated. But here is the critical distinction that we must make immediately. This is not a desire for violence. It is not a desire for actual danger. It is something far more complex and far more psychological. It is a desire for abdication. Now, we are going to peel back the layers of this specific desire. We are going to look at why the woman who spends her entire day making difficult decisions finds the ultimate bliss in a scenario where she is not allowed to make any decisions at all. We are going to explore why surrender is not a sign of weakness, but actually a luxury that only the strong can truly afford. If this is your secret, you are not broken. And you are certainly not alone. You are simply navigating the complex balance of the modern female mind, decision fatigue, and the off switch. To understand why a woman would fantasize about being overpowered, we have to look at the landscape of her daily life. Let's think about your brain for a moment. From the second you wake up until the moment you close your eyes, your mind is a high-speed processor of responsibility. You are constantly predicting needs. Is there enough milk for coffee? Did I reply to that urgent email? Is my partner happy? Did I schedule the doctor's appointment? Do I look okay in this outfit? Psychologists call this mental load. It is the invisible, heavy backpack of logistics and emotional management that most women carry 24 hours a day. Every single action you take requires a micro decision. You are the captain of the ship, constantly steering, constantly vigilant, constantly responsible for the outcome. This leads to a state known as decision fatigue. By the time 10 and Oda's PM rolls around, your decision-making muscles are exhausted. They are trembling from overuse. The very last thing you want to do in the bedroom is manage another project. You don't want to direct the flow of intimacy. You don't want to worry if you are moving correctly or if he is enjoying it or what comes next. This is where the fantasy of surrender becomes a psychological necessity. In a fantasy where you are taken, where the partner takes total overwhelming control, your brain is granted permission to flip the off switch. Think about the mechanics of this fantasy. If you are being pinned down, or if you are being told exactly what to do, or if the scenario implies that you have no choice, then you are no longer responsible for the outcome. You are not the captain anymore. You are the passenger. For a woman who is hyper-responsible in her daily life, this is the ultimate form of rest. It is a vacation for the mind. In this space, you don't have to worry about whether you are being sexy enough, because the scenario implies that his desire is so uncontrollable that he must have you. You don't have to worry about initiating, because he has already taken the initiative. You don't have to worry about pacing, rhythm, or logistics. The ravishment fantasy is the brain's way of forcing a hard reset. It creates a container where you are purely a physical being, reacting to sensation, stripped of all your to-do list and responsibilities. Many women feel guilty about this. They worry that fantasizing about passivity sets feminism back 50 years. But psychology tells us the opposite is true. The more power a woman holds in her public life, the more decisions she has to make, the more likely she is to crave this specific type of relief in her private life. It is a balancing of the scales. Your psyche is seeking equilibrium. If you spend 12 hours a day being the alpha, your nervous system craves 30 minutes of being the omega, the one who simply receives without having to earn it, plan it, or ask for it. it is not about humiliation. It is about the sweet, silent relief of letting go of the wheel. The safety of the scenario. Now we must address the elephant in the room. The source of the shame that keeps this confession locked in the dark. There is often a terrifying confusion for women who experience these thoughts. You might ask yourself, does this mean I want to be assaulted? Does this mean I want to be unsafe? The answer is an emphatic, absolute no. There is a massive structural difference between a fantasy of non-consent and the reality of non-consent, and that difference can be summed up in one word: agency. In a fantasy, or in a role-play scenario with a trusted partner, you are actually the one in complete control. You are the director of the movie. Even if the character you are playing is helpless, you, the woman dreaming it, are the one orchestrating the scene. You know deep down in your subconscious that you are safe. You know that the person overpowering you actually loves you, respects you, and would stop the moment you truly needed them to. This is what psychologists call the safety paradox. The thrill of the fantasy comes specifically because you are safe. Think of it like a roller coaster. Why do we pay money to strap ourselves into a machine that drops us from a 300-foot height? We scream. Our hearts race. Our adrenaline spikes. Our body thinks we are falling to our death. But we enjoy it. Why? Because we trust engineering. We know the seatbelt is locked. We know the ride will end safely. If you believed the roller coaster was actually broken and you were truly going to die, it wouldn't be a thrill, it would be a trauma. The ravishment fantasy works the same way. It allows you to visit the high-intensity sensations of fear, adrenaline, and total powerlessness, but within the seatbelt of a loving relationship or a safe mind. This distinction is vital because it frees you from judgment. Wanting to be dominated in bed does not mean you have low self-esteem. It does not mean you attract danger. It simply means you have a high trust system where you feel safe enough to play with the edges of control. When a woman fantasizes about a stranger or a force taking her, she isn't fantasizing about the pain of violation. She is fantasizing about the intensity of desire. She is imagining a desire so strong, so overwhelming, that it shatters polite society rules. She wants to be wanted that badly. So if you have ever felt dirty or wrong for liking the idea of being held down or silenced, please understand, your brain knows the difference between a game and a threat. You are simply visiting a playground where the rules of the real world, politeness, permission, gentleness, are temporarily suspended for your own pleasure. Anonymous case study, Sarah's secret. To truly understand how this looks in the real world, I want to share a story. This is a composite story based on real accounts from the survey, but let's call her Sarah. Sarah is 38 years old. She is a director of operations for a logistics company. Her entire life is defined by competence. From the moment her alarm goes off at 6:00 a.m., Sarah is the one everyone looks to for answers. Her husband, Mark, is a kind, gentle man, a teacher who supports her career and is an equal partner in parenting their 2 children. On paper, Sarah had everything, but inside she felt like she was slowly suffocating. In the bedroom, things had become polite. Mark was respectful. He would ask, "Is this okay?" or "What would you like to do tonight?" And every time he asked that, "What would you like?" Sarah felt a spike of irritation that she couldn't explain. She didn't want to decide what she liked. She didn't want to give instructions. She spent all day giving instructions. She started having a recurring fantasy. In the fantasy, she would come home, and before she could even take off her coat or check the mail, she would be pinned against the door. No questions. No, how was your day? Just an overwhelming silent force taking her. In her mind, she wasn't Sarah the director. She was just a body reacting. But guilt consumed her. She looked at Mark, her sweet feminist husband who respected her so much, and she felt like a traitor. She thought, if I tell him I want him to be rough or that I want him to ignore my no during a role play, he'll think I'm crazy. Or worse, he'll think I'm unhappy. So she stayed silent, and the silence turned into distance. The sex stopped because the effort of managing it became too much for her tired brain. The breakthrough came one night after a particularly brutal week at work. Sarah was at a breaking point. They were lying in bed, the silence heavy between them. Mark asked gently, "Is there anything I can do to help you relax?" Sarah realized she had 2 choices: stay silent and drift further apart, or tell the truth. She turned off the lamp, using the darkness as a shield. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. She whispered, "I don't want to make any more decisions, Mark. I don't want you to ask me what I want. I want you to just take it. I want you to tell me what to do." There was a long pause. Sarah held her breath, terrified he would be disgusted. Instead, She felt his energy shift. Mark didn't say a word. He didn't ask, "Are you sure?" Because he heard the desperation in her voice. He simply moved. He took her hands and pinned them above her head, firmly, with a strength she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a decade, Sarah's mind went completely blank. She described it later not as sexual excitement, as a spiritual exhale. The moment she couldn't move her hands, the moment she realized she couldn't do anything even if she wanted to, her brain finally released its grip on the world. Off switch was flipped. She wasn't a mother. She wasn't a boss. She wasn't a wife. She was just existing. That night didn't fix everything in their lives, but it saved their intimacy. It gave them a secret language. On days when Sarah was overwhelmed, she didn't need a massage or a bubble bath. She needed to be relieved of her power. She needed to surrender. Sarah's story is not unique. It is the story of thousands of women who are starving for a moment where they don't have to be in charge. And it proves that sometimes the thing we are most afraid to ask for is the very thing that will bring us back to life. If Sarah's story resonates with you, you have just unlocked the first secret of the female shadow. But as we are about to see, surrender is only one piece of the puzzle. Sometimes the fantasy isn't about closing your eyes, it's about making sure everyone else's eyes are on you. The muse archetype, the desire to be watched, the shift from object to subject. If the first major fantasy was about closing your eyes and letting the world fade away, the second most common confession from our 200 women is the exact opposite. It is about keeping your eyes wide open. It is about the light staying on. It is about being seen, truly, deeply, and undeniably seen. This is the arc of the muse. In our survey, nearly 45% of women admitted to fantasies involving some form of exhibitionism. Now, before you recoil at that word, before you imagine flashing strangers or performing on a stage, let's strip away the stigma. In the context of the female mind, exhibitionism rarely means wanting a literal audience of thousands. It is far more intimate than that. It is the profound desire to be the sole focus of your partner's visual world. We live in a culture that teaches women to view themselves as projects. From a young age, we are taught to fix, hide, contour, and shrink. We look in the mirror and we see a collection of flaws to be managed. We see the stretch marks, the softness, the asymmetry. We learn to hide. When intimacy begins, many women have a default instinct to dim the lights or to hide under the covers, believing that if they are less visible, they are more safe. But deep in the psyche, there is a rebellion against this hiding. The muse of fantasy is the desire to stop hiding and start shining. Women who crave this are not necessarily narcissists. They are not obsessed with themselves. In fact, it is often the women who struggle most with feeling invisible in their daily lives who crave this the most. They want to shift from being an object that is critiqued to a subject that is adored. The fantasy usually looks like this. You are in a public place, or perhaps in front of a window, or simply in a brightly lit room. And he is watching you. He isn't just glancing at you. He is consumed by you. He cannot look away. In this scenario, you are not doing anything useful. You aren't organizing the house or solving a problem. You are simply existing in your body, and that existence alone is enough to drive him to distraction. It is a fantasy of worthiness. It says, I am enough just as I am to captivate you. It is the antidote to the feeling of invisibility that plagues so many long-term relationships. The psychology of the gaze, let's dig deeper into why this specific dynamic, being watched, is so psychologically addictive for women in long-term relationships. Think about the beginning of your relationship, the honeymoon phase. Do you remember how he used to look at you? That hungry look. The way his eyes would follow you across the room. That gaze was a potent drug. It communicated without a single word that you were the most important thing in his universe. It validated your femininity. It made you feel electric. But as years pass, the hungry look often gets replaced by the familiar glance. He loves you, yes, but he sees you now as his partner, his co-parent, his best friend. He looks at you to ask a question, but he rarely looks into you with that primal intensity. The fantasy of being watched is a desperate attempt by the subconscious to reclaim that electricity. When a woman fantasizes about having sex in a semi-public place like a parked car, a balcony, or a secluded beach, it is rarely because she actually wants to be caught by the police or a neighbor. That would be stressful. The thrill comes from the risk. Why? Because if he is willing to risk getting caught just to have you right now, it proves how irresistible you are. It is a measurement of his desire. The logic of the fantasy is he wants me so badly, he can't even wait until we get home. That is a powerful aphrodisiac. Furthermore, the gaze serves as a mirror. In our daily lives, we often feel like we are playing roles, mom, boss daughter. We lose track of who we physically are. But when you are the object of a man's intense, undivided attention, you are forced back into your body. In this fantasy, you are not the one doing the work. You are the view. You are the landscape. This flips the script on the mental load we discussed at first. If you are the muse, your only job is to be. You don't have to perform. You don't have to be efficient. You just have to let him witness you. This is why the gaze is so often linked to silence in these fantasies. The woman doesn't want to talk. She wants to be devoured by his eyes. She wants to feel the weight of his attention pressing against her skin like a physical touch. It is validation in its purest, most primal form, mirrors, lights, and visibility. How does this fantasy manifest practically? For the women in our study, it didn't always mean risking arrest in a public park. It often showed up in much more subtle, accessible ways inside the bedroom. The most common tool of the muse is the mirror. Fantasizing about sex in front of a mirror is incredibly common, yet many women feel vain for admitting it. They think, if I look in the mirror, it means I'm obsessed with myself. Psychology tells us the opposite. When a woman watches herself having sex in a mirror or watches her partner watching her in the mirror, she is engaging in a process called erotic dissociation. She is stepping outside of her own head and viewing the scene like a movie. Suddenly, she isn't just Sarah the accountant who feels bloated today. She sees a woman being pleasured. She sees the arch of her back. She sees the hunger on her partner's face. The mirror allows her to see herself through his eyes. It proves to her brain, look at that. Look how sexy this is. Look how much he wants you. This also explains the fantasy of lighting. While many of us instinctively turn the lights off to hide our insecurities, the muse fantasy demands illumination. It craves the spotlight. This might manifest as a desire to send photos or videos to a partner during the day. That risky selfie sent from the office bathroom isn't just a picture, it's a bid for visibility. It's a way of saying, see me, think about me, desire me. When a woman sends that photo, she is waiting for the reaction. She is waiting for the text back that says, whoa, that single word of validation can power her confidence for an entire week. It reinforces the idea that she is a sexual being distinct from her daily responsibilities. It is a way of keeping the erotic self alive in a world that tries to bury it under laundry and spreadsheets, overcoming the body shame barrier. Now, I can hear the hesitation in some of your minds. I can hear the inner critic whispering, this fantasy is for 20-year-olds. This is for women with perfect bodies. I have a C-section scar. I have gained weight. I can't be the muse. This is the tragedy of the female experience. We deny ourselves our greatest pleasures because we believe we haven't earned them physically. But here is the truth revealed by the data. The fantasy of being watched has zero correlation with body type. It is not reserved for the size 2s. In fact, men are biologically wired very differently than women when it comes to visual arousal. We as women tend to analyze details. We see the cellulite, we see the gray hair. We zoom in on the flaws. Men, generally speaking, see the essence. When a man is in a state of arousal, he is not critiquing your gym routine. He is not auditing your skin texture. He is experiencing the presence of a woman. He is seeing the curve of a hip, the softness of skin, the availability of pleasure. His brain is flooded with dopamine simply because you are there and you are his. The muse fantasy is actually the cure for body shame, not the result of body confidence. You don't wait until you feel confident to leave the lights on. You leave the lights on to become confident. When you allow yourself to be seen, when you stop hiding your stomach or covering your chest, you are retraining your brain. You are confronting the fear of rejection and realizing that the rejection isn't coming. You are expecting him to look away in disgust, but instead you find him looking closer in desire. That moment, the moment you realize he loves looking at what you hate, is transformative. It heals decades of negative programming. So if you harbor a secret desire to be watched, to leave the curtains open, or to film a moment with your partner, do not wait until you're perfect. You will be waiting forever. The power of this fantasy lies in the vulnerability of it. It is about saying, here, no filters, no hiding. Look at me. It takes immense courage, but the reward is a feeling of power that is unmatched. Because when you realize that you, just as you are right now, have the power to captivate him visually, you stop walking through the world like an apology. You start walking like a queen. And speaking of queens, sometimes the desire isn't just to be seen. Sometimes the desire is to take the throne and watch him kneel. The queen archetype, the power flip, the taboo of female aggression. We have spoken about the luxury of surrender, and we have spoken about the validation of being a muse. But there is a third door in the hallway of female fantasy, and for many women, this door is the hardest one to open. It is the door labeled control. In our survey of 200 women, a significant number confessed to a desire that directly contradicts the nurturing image society places on them. They didn't want to be held, they wanted to hold. They didn't want to be taken, they wanted to take. This is the archetype of the queen. To understand why this fantasy is so potent and so often suppressed, we have to look at how girls are raised compared to boys. From childhood, women are conditioned to be accommodating. We are taught to smile, to smooth over conflicts, to anticipate the needs of others, and to suppress our anger. We are told that aggression is an unattractive trait in a woman. We are taught to be the peacekeepers, not the conquerors. But psychology tells us that repression breeds obsession. When you spend your entire life being nice, your shadow self, the part of you that is fierce, demanding, and selfish, doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. It waits for a safe place to explode. The bedroom is often the only place where a woman can safely uncage this dark feminine energy without consequences. The fantasy of dominance isn't necessarily about leather or whips, though it can be. At its core, it is about the permission to be selfish. For a woman who spends her day serving her boss, her children, and her partner, the fantasy of being the queen is a radical reversal of roles. In this scenario, she is not worried about his pleasure. She is not worrying if he is tired. She is dictating the terms. She is the one giving orders. There is a profound psychological relief in being the one who says, do this, and seeing it happen immediately. It repairs the part of the psyche that feels unheard in daily life. If you have ever felt ignored in a meeting or taken for granted at home, the fantasy of absolute authority is your brain's way of reclaiming your voice. It is the ultimate antidote to the good girl syndrome, worship and service. Within the archetype of the queen, there is a specific subgenre of fantasy that appeared over and over in our data, the fantasy of worship. This is distinct from general dominance. General dominance might be aggressive, but worship is about reverence. In this scenario, the male partner is often cast in a role of service. He might be massaging her feet for an hour. He might be performing oral sex on her with no expectation of reciprocation. He might simply be kneeling, waiting for her command. Why is this so appealing? Because it addresses the imbalance of emotional labor. In many heterosexual relationships, even modern ones, women often carry the burden of care tasks. We are the ones who remember birthdays, who notice when the milk is low, who track the emotional temperature of the household. We are the givers. The fantasy of being worshipped is a desire to force the universe to pay us back. When a woman fantasizes about her partner serving her, she is not trying to humiliate him. She is trying to feel precious. She wants to experience a dynamic where her pleasure is the only goal of the interaction. There is a deep restorative power in being the receiver. Imagine a scenario where you are lying back, perhaps instructed not to move while your partner devotes himself entirely to your body. In this moment, you are not a mother, you are not a facilitator, you are a goddess. You are an idol being engaged with by a devotee. This dynamic creates a tremendous amount of safety. For women who have body image issues, the worship fantasy is a bomb. If he is worshipping you, kissing every inch of skin, treating your body like a temple, it silences the inner critic that says you are flawed. You cannot be flawed and be a goddess at the same time. The fantasy forces you to accept your own divinity. Furthermore, this dynamic shifts the pressure of performance. In a standard sexual encounter, there is often a mutual race to the finish line. There is a pressure to reciprocate. He did this for me, so I should do this for him. The queen worshipper dynamic shatters that obligation. The rule of this fantasy is that you are the destination. He is gaining pleasure simply by pleasing you. This frees the woman to drop into a level of physical sensation she rarely accesses, because she isn't mentally calculating her debt to him. She is simply soaking up the adoration she has starved for, the psychological edging of control. Now, let's look at the mechanics of power. How does a woman who might be physically smaller than her partner feel powerful in bed? It isn't through brute force, it is through denial. One of the most thrilling aspects of the queen archetype is the concept of teasing or odging. In your daily life, you are likely a yes woman. You say yes to extra projects. You say yes to driving the kids to practice. You say yes to helping a friend move. You are conditioned to be available and helpful. The fantasy of Daniel is the intoxicating power of saying, "Mo, not yet, stop, Wait, when a woman controls the pace of intimacy, when she brings her partner to the edge of pleasure and then commands him to stop, she is exercising a power that feels almost magical. She realizes that despite his physical strength, she holds the keys to his satisfaction. She is the gatekeeper. This realization is incredibly empowering. It flips the script on the traditional narrative that men are the pursuers and women are the caught. In this version, she is the orchestrator. There is a concept in psychology called resource control. Whoever controls the resource holds the power. In the bedroom, the resource is pleasure. When you realize that your touch, your permission, and your presence are the resources he is desperate for, you stop feeling like a participant and start feeling like the owner of the experience. This kind of play allows a woman to explore her own cruelty in a safe way. And I don't mean actual cruelty. I mean the playfulness of making him wait. It allows her to see him struggle with desire for her. Seeing a man lose his composure because you won't let him touch you yet is a massive ego boost. It confirms that your sexual power is real. Anonymous case study, Elena's awakening. To illustrate this, let's look at Elena. Elena, 32, described herself as a chronic people pleaser. She was the woman who apologized when someone else bumped into her. In bed, she was quiet, compliant, and focused entirely on her husband's happiness. But she was bored, and more than bored, she was resentful. She read an article about female dominance and decided on a whim to try it. She told her husband, "Tonight, you aren't allowed to touch me until I say so." She expected him to laugh. Instead, his eyes went dark. He agreed immediately. Elena described that night as an out-of-body experience. For the first time in her life, she wasn't worrying about being polite. She sat on the edge of the bed and made him wait. She watched him. She gave commands. She realized that her hesitation wasn't kindness, it was fear. And when she dropped the fear, she found a well of power she didn't know she had. The most shocking part for Elena wasn't the sex, it was the next day. She walked into her office and for the first time in 3 years told her boss no to an unreasonable deadline. She didn't apologize. She didn't shake. She realized that the queen she found in the bedroom didn't stay in the bedroom. Once she tasted the feeling of her own authority, she couldn't unknow it. The fantasy of control had actually trained her for reality. This is the gift of the queen archetype. It reminds you that you are not just a helper in your own life. You are the ruler. But what happens when the queen gets bored of the king? What happens when the familiar face of your partner isn't enough to spark the fire? That is when the mind wanders to the most taboo territory of all. The stranger and the mask, the novelty factor, the I am not myself paradox. We have explored the desire to surrender, the desire to be seen, and the desire to rule. But there is a fourth confession that appeared in our data with startling frequency, and it is the one that carries the heaviest burden of guilt for women in committed relationships. It is the fantasy of the stranger. Approximately 38% of the women surveyed admitted to fantasizing about faceless men, fictional characters, or scenarios where they and their partner pretend to be people they are not. When a woman in a happy marriage realizes she is thinking about a stranger, her first reaction is often panic. Does this mean I don't love my husband? Does this mean I want to cheat? Psychology offers a resounding answer: no. In fact, this fantasy is rarely about wanting a different partner. It is about wanting a different self. Think about who you are right now. You are a collection of history and responsibilities. You are the responsible mother. You are the reliable employee. You are the patient wife. Your identity is solidified. Everyone knows what to expect from you. You know what to expect from yourself. This creates a psychological cage. You cannot suddenly be the wild seductress because that doesn't fit the character you have played for the last 10 years. You feel silly trying to break character. You worry your partner will laugh or ask, who are you trying to be? The fantasy of the stranger or the fantasy of wearing a mask solves this problem instantly. If you are pretending to be someone else, or if you are with a man who doesn't know your name, the cage disappears. The responsible mother isn't in the room. Patient wife didn't walk through the door. This is the I am not myself paradox. We fantasize about strangers not because we want to leave our lives, but because we want a vacation from our identities. In a role-play scenario or a fantasy about a chance encounter in a hotel bar, you are liberated from your history. You don't have to be good. You don't have to be sensible. You can be reckless, loud, or demanding, because technically it isn't you doing those things, it is the character. It is a psychological loophole. It allows a good woman to experience bad behavior without breaking her moral code. It creates a safe container for the parts of your personality that don't fit into your daily life. It is not a betrayal of your partner. It is a desperate bid for freedom from your own reputation. The safety of anonymity. Why is the specific element of the stranger, someone who doesn't know you, so erotic to the female mind, especially for women who value emotional connection? It comes down to the safety of anonymity. Intimacy with a long-term partner is beautiful, but it is also heavy. It is heavy with expectation. Your partner knows your insecurities. They know you hate your thighs. They know you are worried about your mom's health. They know you were grumpy this morning. When they touch you, all of that data is present in the room. A stranger has none of that data. To a stranger, you are a blank slate. He doesn't know you are stressed about money. He doesn't know you are a mom. He doesn't know you have a scar on your knee. He sees only the immediate physical reality of you. For introverted women or women who are highly self-critical, this is incredibly freeing. It is the ultimate relief from judgment. In the fantasy of the stranger, you are being desired purely for your physical existence in that exact second. There is no baggage. There is no context. It is pure, unadulterated attraction. This explains the popularity of fantasies involving masks or blindfolds. A mask is a barrier between your social self and your erotic self. When you cover your eyes or your face, you are symbolically cutting off your connection to the real world. You are becoming anonymous. There is a thrill in being no one. When you are no one, you have no obligations. You don't have to be polite. You don't have to worry about the future. The encounter exists in a vacuum. This is why vacation sex is often so much better than bedroom sex. Not because the hotel sheets are better, but because when you are in a different city where no one knows your name, the heavy cloak of your identity falls off. The stranger fantasy is the brain's attempt to recreate that vacation feeling without leaving the house. It is a craving for a moment where you are defined by nothing but your pleasure. Primal pursuit via civilized love. There is a fundamental conflict at the heart of every long-term relationship, one that the famous psychotherapist Esther Perel often discusses. It is the conflict between security and mystery. We marry for security. We want someone who will be there when we are sick, someone who knows our coffee order, someone who is safe. But we desire mystery. We desire the unknown. We desire the bridge we haven't crossed yet. Desire needs distance to thrive. Fire needs air. If you are glued to your partner's hip, knowing every thought in their head, there is no air. There is no mystery. You cannot want what you already have. The fantasy of the stranger is a tool the mind uses to inject artificial distance into a secure relationship. When you roleplay that you are strangers meeting at a bar, or when you imagine your husband is a mysterious figure you've never met, you are essentially tricking your brain. You are artificially creating a hunt. In a civilized, loving marriage, the prize has been won. You are safe on the sofa watching Netflix. That is wonderful for companionship, but it is fatal for eroticism. Eroticism thrives on the question, does he want me? Will I get him? By engaging in fantasies of novelty, pretending to be different people, meeting in different locations, using different names, you are momentarily reopening that question. You are simulating the thrill of the first time. This is why this archetype is so vital for relationship longevity. It isn't a sign that the relationship is failing. It is a sign that the woman is trying to keep the flame alive. She is trying to reconcile the safety of the husband she loves with the thrill of the lover she craves. She wants to be taken by someone who feels dangerous and new, but she wants to wake up next to the man who makes her feel safe. The fantasy of the stranger allows her to have both men while only being married to one. It is a brilliant, creative solution to the problem of domestic boredom, practical magic. So how do you bring this into reality without feeling ridiculous? The biggest barrier to the stranger novelty fantasy is the cringe factor. You might be thinking, I can't put on a costume and use a fake accent. I'll start laughing, it will be awkward. You are right, high stakes roleplay is difficult, but you don't need a costume to tap into the energy of the stranger. You just need to change the context. Here is the practical magic of novelty for beginners 1. The separate arrival. Next time you go out for dinner, don't drive together. Don't talk about the kids in the car. Agree to meet at the restaurant bar. Walk in separately. When you see him sitting there, don't walk up and say, hi honey, sorry I'm late. Walk up and sit next to him. Order a drink. Look at him like you've never seen him before. This tiny shift, removing the domestic arrival routine, tricks the brain. For 10 minutes, pretend you don't know him. Let him buy you a drink. Let the conversation be flirty, not functional. You aren't wearing a mask, but you are wearing the energy of a fresh encounter. 2, the visual shift. If you always wear sweatpants at home, wearing a dress changes your character. But try changing something deeper. Wear a perfume you never wear your hair in a way he hasn't seen in years. When you change your sensory presentation, you signal to your own brain, I am not Tuesday night Sarah right now. I am someone else. 3, the silence is the easiest form of role play. Agree that for 20 minutes in the bedroom, no words are allowed. Words anchor us to our personalities. Words remind us of our jokes, our history, our dynamic. When you remove words, you become bodies. You become strangers. The goal is not to win an Oscar for acting. The goal is to create a magic circle, a small protected space in time where the rules of your normal life don't apply. Novelty isn't about buying new toys or learning acrobatics. It is about the willingness to be unfamiliar to each other for just a little while. It is the courage to look at the person you've known for 10 years and decide to see them for the very first time again. But what stops us from doing this? What stops us from asking for the surrender, the worship, or the stranger? It is the fear that silenced the 200 women in our study. It is the shame gap, why we are so afraid to speak. The fear of judgment. We have spent the last hour uncovering the deepest, most potent desires of the female mind. We have talked about the hunger for surrender, the need to be worshipped, and the thrill of the stranger. If you have been nodding along, if you have felt a spark of recognition in these descriptions, you might be feeling a sense of relief. But right behind that relief, there is likely a shadow, a cold, quiet fear that says, I could never actually say this out loud. This is the shame gap. It is the massive canyon that exists between what we feel in the privacy of our own heads and what we are willing to share with the people we sleep next to. Why is this gap so wide? Why? In a modern world where we talk openly about everything from mental health to politics, does the topic of our own pleasure still feel like a confession of guilt? The answer lies in the fear of judgment, specifically the fear of diagnosis. Deep down, many women worry that their fantasies are symptoms of something broken within them. If I tell him I want to be dominated, will he think I have daddy issues? If I tell him I want to pretend to be strangers, will he think I'm unhappy in the marriage? If I tell him I want to be watched, will he think I'm a narcissist? We are terrified that if we speak these dark, complex truths, our partner will look at us with disgust. We fear the moment of silence after the confession. We fear that the image he has of us, the good wife, the sweet mother, will be shattered, replaced by something dirty or damaged. So we stay silent, we protect our partners from the truth of who we are, believing we are doing them a favor. We convince ourselves that our shadow self is a monster that needs to be kept in the basement. But this silence comes at a terrible cost. It slowly erodes intimacy. By hiding your deepest desires, you are essentially presenting a polished, edited version of yourself to your partner. You are letting him love a character, not the real woman. And the real woman, the one who wants to be ravaged, worshipped, or taken, is left starving in the dark. Men's secret desires, if there is one thing that can dissolve this fear instantly, it is a change in perspective. We spend so much time worrying about what men will think of us, we rarely stop to consider what is happening in their minds. Here is the secret that most men are too terrified to tell you. They are just as scared as you are. And more importantly, they are desperate for you to speak first. Psychological data on male sexuality reveals a fascinating truth. The vast majority of men in long-term relationships are not judging their partners for being too kinky. In fact, their number one complaint is usually that their partner is too reserved. Men are visual and adventurous creatures by nature, but they are also conditioned to be gentlemen. Especially in the era of Me Too and necessary conversations about consent, many good men are terrified of crossing a line. They are terrified of making you uncomfortable, so they default to vanilla. They default to safe, polite, routine sex because they don't want to disrespect you. When you hold back your darker fantasies, you are unintentionally confirming their fear that you are fragile. But when a woman speaks up, when she whispers, I want you to take control, or I want to try this, the reaction from the male brain is rarely discussed. It is relief. It is the relief of permission. Suddenly, he realizes he doesn't have to walk on eggshells. He realizes that you are not a fragile porcelain doll, but a sexual being with hunger just like him. Furthermore, we must address the Madonna whore complex. Women often fear that if they are too wild, men will stop respecting them. But in a committed, loving relationship, Sharing a vulnerability actually increases respect. Think about it. If your husband came to you and shared a deep, vulnerable secret about what he wanted, would you think he was disgusting? Or would you feel honored that he trusted you enough to show you his true self? You would feel honored. You would feel closer to him. He feels the exact same way. He isn't looking for a good girl. He is looking for you. And by hiding your fantasies, you are depriving him of the chance to be the hero who fulfills them. You are starving him of the excitement he craves just as much as you do. The vocabulary of vulnerability, understanding the psychology helps, but it doesn't solve the practical problem. How do you actually get the words out of your mouth? The jump from silence to, I want you to tie me up, feels too big. It feels risky. The key to crossing the shame gap is to build a bridge. They're not a cliff. You don't need a big, serious, we need to talk moment. In fact, that is the worst way to do it. Here is the vocabulary of vulnerability. These are low-stakes scripts you can use to test the waters without feeling exposed. One, the third-party method. Instead of saying, I want this, you attribute the idea to something else. I was reading this article today about couples who use blindfolds. It sounded kind of intense. What do you think about that? This is safe. If he reacts negatively, you can distance yourself from it. Yeah, it's crazy what people do, but if he reacts with interest, you can step closer. I mean, it kind of sounded fun to me. To the dream method. I had the craziest dream about you last night. You were being so dominant. It woke me up feeling really different. Dreams are safe because they are involuntary. A dream. But sharing it allows you to plant the seed and gauge his reaction to the imagery. 3. The game method. I want to play a game. If we could be anyone else for one night, strangers, characters, anyone, who would you want to be? By asking him first, you take the spotlight off yourself. You get him into the playful mindset. Once he shares, he will naturally ask you. Now, it's just a game. It's just imagination. The goal isn't to demand a change immediately. The goal is to simply normalize the conversation. When you use words like I wonder, imagine if, or what if, you are inviting him into a playground. You aren't giving him a list of demands. You are giving him an invitation to play. And remember, he wants to play just as much as you do. The trust fall, ultimately sharing a fantasy, is the emotional equivalent of a trust fall. You are standing on the edge of the cliff, closing your eyes and falling backward, hoping he will catch you. And yes, it is terrifying. Your heart will race. Your voice might shake, but that shaking voice, that is the sound of intimacy growing. Intimacy is not just about bodies touching. Intimacy is about being known. If he doesn't know what you fantasize about, he doesn't fully know you. He knows the daytime you, but he doesn't know the nighttime you. When you finally bridge that gap, when you finally say the words, something shifts in the relationship that is far more powerful than just better sex. It creates a conspiracy of two. It becomes use against the world. We're the only two people who know this secret. We are the only two people who go to this place together. That secret bond is the glue that holds marriages together for decades. It is the spark that keeps the fire burning when the kids are crying and the bills are due. So take the risk, do the trust fall, because the only thing scarier than speaking your desire is living a life where you never let yourself be truly known. You have the map now. You understand the surrender, the muse, the queen, and the stranger. You understand the fear. The only thing left to do is to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and begin reclaiming your pleasure. The summary of the 200, we began this journey with a thought experiment. 200 women in a room holding their deepest secrets on slips of paper. At the start, those secrets felt like burdens. They felt like evidence of brokenness or shame. Good women simply don't think about. But after peeling back the layers of the female psyche, the picture has changed. We have met the high-powered CEO who craves the surrender, not because she is weak, because she is tired of being strong. We have met the invisible wife who longs to be the muse, to have the lights on and the mirrors up, reclaiming her right to be seen. We have met the chronic people pleaser who finds her voice only when she becomes the queen, finally demanding the worship she spends her life giving to others. And we have met the devoted partner who puts on the mask of the stranger, not to escape her marriage, but to rediscover the spark of mystery that keeps it alive. If you have recognized yourself in any of these archetypes, let this be your validation. You are not on the fringe. You are right in the center of the human experience. The data proves that these fantasies are not anomalies. They are coping mechanisms. They are batteries. They are the creative, brilliant ways your mind balances the complex demands of modern womanhood. Whether you crave the loss of control or the assertion of power, your desires are not random. They are a map to what you need: rest, validation, authority, or freedom, the invitation to explore. So where do we go from here? The goal of this deep dive was not just to inform you, but to give you permission to stop policing your own thoughts, permission to stop feeling guilty for what turns you on. Think of your imagination as a private garden. It is the one place in the world that belongs entirely to you. In that garden, you are allowed to grow whatever you want. You are allowed to explore scenarios that are politically incorrect. You are allowed to explore power dynamics that don't align with your daytime values. That is the safety of the mind. A fantasy is not a contract. It is a playground. You do not have to act on every thought to validate it. You can enjoy the thrill of a fantasy without ever leaving your bed. But if you do choose to bring these desires into your reality, if you do choose to cross that bridge with your partner, know that you are doing something brave. You are choosing to be whole. Reclaiming your pleasure is the ultimate act of self-love. It is saying, I matter enough to have this. I matter enough to ask for this. This conversation is just the beginning. The landscape of female psychology is vast, deep, and often misunderstood, but we are dedicated to exploring every inch of it together. If this video made you feel seen today, if it helped you drop even an ounce of the shame you walked in with, I want to know, leave a single rose emoji in the comments below. That rose is our code. It tells me that you are part of this community of women who are ready to own their desires. It tells me that you made it to the end and that you are ready for more. And if you want to continue uncovering the secrets of intimacy, psychology, and the hidden dynamics of relationships, make sure you are subscribed. We have so many more secrets to share. You are powerful, you are complex, and you are entirely normal. I'll see you in the next deep dive.